Hello and welcome to another video. Now, again, I'm back in Berlin, so reverting to my typical schedule of doing Lithuanian dishes on the first Friday of every month. My reason for that is you folks seem to like them. So, hope you're doing great. We're going to do another Lithuanian dish today. Today's dish is called vilpikai. I think that's how it's pronounced. I haven't been able to find a recording of the pronunciation. But vilpikai means whistles or whistlers. And as we get to the end of making this dish, you'll see why they're called that. These are basically a different kind of potato pancake. They're made a very different way, and they're absolutely delicious. Now, one note on portions. I'm making enough for at least 2 people. But I'm not going to cook them all up for my lunch today. So we're going to go ahead and explain if you need to make more than you can eat at once, how to go ahead and do that and still have them delicious and fresh when you're ready to eat them. Vilpikai have this final cooking process at the end, which you can actually delay for a day, and that means that you can actually have them fresh when you want them. These are wonderful and quite unlike anything I've eaten anywhere else. So, hope you enjoy. For the actual vilpikai, the ingredients are really simple. I have 6 potatoes, varying in sizes. I'll give you a readout on the weight that I use this time, but most of the recipes are not that specific on grams, so I assume that sort of average sized potatoes are fine. I have 100 grams of flour, and I have 1 egg. And that's basically all for the dough. I'll have a little more flour for dusting and rolling, and I'll have another egg for brushing before I bake them. Next, we'll talk about the sauce and different options. For the sauce, it's fairly simple. I have some bacon, I have an onion, I have a strand of dill, and I have some whipping cream. I'm not going to add flour to this. It will be thickened by reduction, but you could do a few other things. You could add sour cream to this sauce, which I might do. I haven't decided yet. You could also just fry them in butter and sour cream, or you could use the mushroom sauce we talked about last month, and that would be very good as well. So we're going to go ahead and go from here. So I weighed out the potatoes, and they came out to about 450 grams, or about 1 pound US. And I like to mash these using a potato ricer. Makes things really easy, really fast. You could probably use a potato masher, but it's really important that these potatoes are really heavily pulverized so you get the right texture. One other thing that's very important is that the potatoes need to be cool by the time we start mixing everything together. Now, in this particular case, I'm going to go ahead, I've already cooled the potatoes before I'm pressing them, but you could press them hot and then cool them down in the refrigerator. So here, these are all pressed, and I'll come back in just a few moments and we'll discuss next steps. So the next thing to go in is the flour, and then I'm going to take the egg, I'm going to beat it and toss it in also. So it's really important to beat the egg well, otherwise the yolk and white will do funny things in here. And then we're going to knead this into kind of a dough. So you don't have, I think, to mix the flour in ahead of time, but I kind of like to do that. It prevents the egg and flour from just kind of glumming together and becoming harder to manage. So I say lightly stir this up and then pour in the egg. And I have made this as small as half a recipe before. The difficulty, of course, is using half an egg. But since we're going to go ahead and put more egg on these before we bake them, that's not the end of the world. So let's go ahead and stir this up a bit. Stirring it up more, and pretty soon we're going to get to the point where it's kind of more helpful to knead it, and then it's going to stick to your hands and stuff like that. But we will be able to get it into kind of a ball, it's going to be a bit sticky, but that's fine. I think once you try these, you'll recognize that they are very different from anything else I've tried anywhere else. They're absolutely delicious. But once I'm done kneading this a little more, we'll come back and roll it out, cut it, and get it ready to bake. So now this has formed a really sticky mass, so it's about ready. So I'm going to go ahead and flour my working surface. And this can use a fair bit of flour, so don't be too stingy. And dump the mass out onto it and roll it over so that the flour coats it. This is really important. And usually I end up having to cut it off of my working surface with a knife. So just as a note, that's how sticky it is. So once I have it here, I'm going to roll it out and we'll go ahead and cut it. I'll be back with the rolling pin and we'll go ahead and get started. So the thickness we're going for is approximately 1/2 centimeter or 1/4 inch. We're just going to roll this out till we get to about that thickness. And don't be afraid to put a little bit more flour on top if things are sticking. So we can just dust with a little more flour. We're going to once we have everything ready, we will coat it with some egg. So there's just a little bit of flour on top. It's not the end of the world. And it doesn't have to be exactly rectangular. We're going to cut this into sort of diamonds, and that should deal with most of the problems here. So here we are. Now I'm going to cut it. Now to have the best result, my first set of lines are going to be kind of parallel to my main dough. And then I'm going to cut at an angle. This way I can get nice diamonds. Pretty much all the way across. They don't all have to be the same size. But once this is done, I'm going to start, I'm going to put them on parchment paper, and then I'll beat another egg. So in preparation for moving to the parchment paper, I usually just run a knife underneath the bottom of these. The idea is to make sure that they separate cleanly, and then I can just pick them up with my fingers and set them on the parchment. We just simply make sure that they're not touching, and from there we'll go ahead and arrange them, and when I'm done I'll bring it over. So I've put these out on this dish here, and then I'm going to paint them with the egg over the top. And then we will bake these at 200 Celsius, that's 400 Fahrenheit, for about 10-15 minutes, approximately 15 minutes usually. And at that point they will be, they may brown a little bit, but they should be puffing up in some cases, but they should be cooked all the way through. And then we'll take them out. And at that point, they can just go into the refrigerator if you're not going to eat them right away, and you can save them for when you're going to eat them. Then you'll see the final cooking stage, which is where we fry them after they've been baked. So you can probably see that these have puffed up just a little bit, and now they're sinking back down. That's fine. I've put the second set in, and while they cook, again about 15 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and get the sauce started. So for the sauce, the first step is sauteing the bacon, and we're going to try to render it down. If I don't get enough grease off of this, you could supplement with a little bit of oil, or I would prefer to use lard or bacon grease. Yeah, this bacon's kind of lean, so I'm going to add a little bit of lard. But you could use a little bit of butter or even vegetable oil if you need to. So we'll go ahead and cook this down for a bit, and then we'll add the onions. Once the bacon is sauteing nicely and we have some fat, I'll add the onion. And I'm still going to keep this on medium while I cook this down a bit. And while I cook it down, basically I'm just waiting for the onions to cook down a bit, and then I will add the dill and a little bit of salt and pepper and the heavy cream. I'm using half a liter or 1 pint of heavy cream, and it should be easy enough to go from there. So here now the onions are browning and cooking down a bit. So I'm going to add the full pint of heavy cream. I'm going to add, and I may end up with more sauce than I'm going to use here, but that's fine. Season to taste with pepper. These sorts of sauces are really good with lots of other things, and so you can save the sauce you're not using and just kind of pair it with whatever else you'd like. Pork chops, for example. And now I'm just going to cook this and let it reduce. I've taken the other ones out, and so in a moment I'm going to start frying those in butter. But I think I'm going to wait a little bit. Probably wait until I'm about ready to take this off the heat. So this is starting to look like it's thickened a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and take it off the heat. And I'm going to start frying up the whistles, and you'll get to see why they're called that as we go through that. We'll be frying these in butter. I've seen some recipes that baste them in butter and bake instead. This particular recipe I'm working with here, we're going to bake and then fry. So we've already done the baking part, so now we'll fry them. So now that the butter is sizzling a little bit, I'm just going to put some of these on, and they'll start frying a little bit, but once we turn them over, then they'll actually start whistling. And I'll make sure I get sort of a good quick video of that so you can actually hear it. So I'll be back when these are flipped over, and you can hear the whistling. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and flip a couple of these over. And we should start to hear them whistle in a moment, although I've only made them a couple of times. Oh yeah, you hear them go right now. So you can hear the air starting to escape and making this whistling sound. It's kind of a high-pitch whistle. And from here, we're going to go ahead and just let these cook a couple minutes, and then we'll go on to the next set, and then we'll mix them with some sauce. So for presentation, I'm going to start by putting these in a bowl. They'll come back onto a plate in a moment. But they're going to go into a bowl. And then I'm going to take some of the sauce. I'm just going to ladle it on top and just toss them very lightly in the sauce to make sure that they're coated. And then I will plate them. And once I'm done with plating them, I'll need a bit more sauce. Once I'm done with plating them, the sauce is just a little bit on the runny side, but it'll be fine. Then I will garnish. So for plating, just going to kind of take these, stack them, and pour the remaining sauce on top. And then I'm going to garnish with a little bit of chopped dill and or parsley, but I'm going to do dill today. So for garnish, and one thing when I'm dusting things like this for garnishes that I really like to do is not just get it on the food, but get it around on the outside of the plate also. And so here we have our vilpikai, and these are going to be absolutely delicious. And now for the taste test. This is absolutely delicious. You gotta try it. I have no other words for it. This is sort of the best potato pancake type recipe I've tasted so far. It's just delicious, creamy, sauce on top just goes a long ways, and the texture is just marvelous. Anyway, hope you like this as much as I do. Bon appetit. See you next week. Achille boy.